Okay, we are picking up on Tesvav Amud Aleph. We are on the first wide line, 3 lines in. So we had just finished. Okay, so we're going to start now. Masnisa Tana, we learned in the Brisa. Kol Shemaisa v'Maisa Vosav Stumin. If you have where it talks about someone does something, it talks about him, and it does not talk about. The action that his father. And then it says it singles out something that they did that was praiseworthy. It could go on. Devar Hashem Shehayel Tzafani ben Kushi ben Gedalia. It's talking about that Hashem spoke to Tzafani, which was a very good thing. And then it names his father and his grandfather, Sibidu Shen Tzadik ben Tzadik. So then we know that not only was Tzafani Tzadik, but also Kushi and Gedalia were also tzaddikim, because it mentions them, and it mentions them in one instance where they did something that was great. And conversely, whenever it talks about someone that does something that was a bad thing, Kigon Vayhiba Chodesh Hashvi Ba Yishmael ben Isanya ben Elishama. It says that in the 7th month that Yishmael came, and he was the son of Isanya and Elishama. And what's it talking about? It's talking about that he went and killed Gedalia ben Achikam. That's when we have Tzom Gedalia, the day after Rosh Hashanah. So that's a horrible thing that he did. And it still names his father and his grandfather, Yadua Shehu Rasha ben Rasha. So it means not only was he a Rasha, but Nisanya and Elishama were also Rashaim as well. Amar Rav Nachman, Malachi Zah Mordechai. So Malachi was Mordechai. V'lama Nikro Shema Malachi. Why was he called Malachi? Shai Mishnah Lamelech, because he was second to the king. So Malachi is a play on words of Melech. So it means that that Mordechai had rose to such prominence that he was like the king. Meisvei, so we're going to say Bryce that's going to say otherwise. It says Baruch ben Neriah, Visharia ben Maaseha, v'Daniel uMordechai belashan, v'Chagai Zachariah Malachi, kum nisnav v'shna shtayim l'Daryavesh. All these people they had nevuah in the 2nd year of Daryavesh. But what do you see? You see that it names out Malachi and Mordechai as separate people. So it can't be that they were the same people. So my answer is to you after you're right. That is a question. Don't have an answer for it. Tanya Amr Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, Malachi za Ezra. That Malachi was not Mordechai, but it was Ezra. The Chachamim Amar Malachi Shema. No, his name was Malachi. Like, why are you trying to figure out who he was instead? Malachi was his name. Amar Rav Nachman, Mistabra Command Amar Malachi za Ezra. It makes sense to say that Malachi was Ezra. Why? D'chsib in Nevi'us Malachi, because it says in the Navi of Malachi, it says Bagda Yehuda v'So'eva Nasis Sub Yisrael, that there was this rebellion that took place. There was this disgusting thing that was done in Yisrael, of Yerushalayim, Kichilal, Yehuda, Kodesh Hashem Raheva, Uval, Bas El Nechar, that they were living with non-Jewish women. So that's the pasuk that was in Malachi. And what do we find by Ezra? Umad Arfish Nashim Nachrios. And who was it that said who is it that tried to separate the Jews from living with non-Jewish women? Ezra. That he says that he was the one that was trying to separate them from living with non-Jewish women. So since you see that the message of Ezra was the same as the message of Malachi, that he was saying that it was a disgusting thing that was done, where the Jews were sleeping with non-Jewish women, so it must be that Malachi was Ezra and that they were the same thing, which they say that's one of the reasons why when Ezra came up from Galus back to Eretz Yisrael, that he had there were very few people that came with him, because he was trying to break the relationships that they had with their wives or with the women that they were having relationships with, and people didn't want to go along with it, so they didn't want to come up with him. Okay, Gemara continues. Tan Rabbanan. Arba Nashim Yufiyafiyos Ha'abalim. There were 4 exceptionally beautiful women that were in the world: Sarah, Abigail, Rachav, Esther. Sarah, Imenu, Abigail, who was the Neviah that we talked about, Rachav, Hazona, and Esther. Ulamanda Amar Esther Yurakrokas Haisen, and according to the pshat that we said, if you remember last week we said that Esther had a greenish complexion, so Mapik Esther Umayli Vashi, so take out Esther and put Vashin, and that's again was the story that Achashverosh wanted to show all the people of the world how beautiful Vashti was. So she was a very beautiful woman. Just after Tosfos asks over here, he says, why to consider Sarah? Because he says that it says that Sarah compared to Chava was like a monkey to a person. So why didn't it compare? Why didn't the Gemara mention Chava? So the Tosfos answers because it's only talking about someone that was born from a human being, but Chava was created from Hashem, so therefore it's not talking about her beauty. Tan Rabbanan. Rachav b'shma zinsa. If someone hears,
why are we talking about beauty? Like we're Jews, we believe in sheker achein hevel yofi. Like was there like an idea here that we're
It's not obsessed about it. The Gemara is
No,
I'm saying the Gemara is saying the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan used to stand outside the mikvah when the women would come out so that they could gaze upon him and then their children would be very beautiful. What does that mean?
Okay, right here, because like you're trying to impart the qualities of Rabbi Yochanan as a Talmud Chacham and
It didn't say quality. The Gemara doesn't say the qualities.
About his beauty, but that's because through the beauty, I'm assuming that
So we could say again, if you say the four Sarah, Abigail, Racham, and Esther, so you could say also that the beauty was also bringing out the qualities as well. I don't know, but again, it's not that beauty is a bad thing. It's certainly not something.
It follows the chapter on the men who marry Gentile women, so maybe it's saying like, hey, we've got our own women.
Maybe that's very good. That could be. Yeah, that's very good. So Gemara says, Tan Rabbanan Rachav b'Shema Zin, so that Rachav, if people would name her, if someone would just mention her name, that they would drive her to passion. Yael b'Kola, Yael would be with her voice. Abigail b'Zichrasa, Abigail they would remember her, and then they would be driven to passion. And Michal Bashal b'Ruyasa, and Michal Bashal, who also ended up marrying David HaMelech, it was also when someone would see her. Again, they would get very impassioned when they would see her. All right, Yitzchak, Kol Amar Rachav, Miyad Nikri. If someone says the name Rachav, they say Rachav twice, right away they become a Balkari. Amar Le Rav Nachman, Ana Amina Rachav lo ichbisli. I said Rachav, and I did not become a Balkari. Amar Le Kikamina Biyodav Makir. We're talking about where you know her and you recognize her, and then someone would say Rachav again because the beauty was so great that it would drive them to become a Balkari. So the Gemara continues now, going back to the Megillah. Mordechai Yada Eskal Asher Nasa, and Mordechai knew everything that was going on. My Amar, what is it that Mordechai? And then it says that Mordechai cried out. So what did he cry out? My Amar, Rav Amar, Gava Haman me'Achashverosh. He cried out that Haman has become greater than Achashverosh, meaning that even though Achashverosh was no lover of the Jews, but Achashverosh hadn't acted upon that at all to do anything to the Jews. Haman came in, and now he had convinced Achashverosh to wipe out the Jewish people, so he was screaming that out. Ushma Lamar, Gavar Malka Yilai Malka Tata, that the upper kingdom has prevailed over the lower kingdom. I mean, it's a euphemism, meaning that the lower kingdom, i.e. Achashverosh / Haman, has Kaviyakol conquered over Hashem, because now there's this decree coming out that all the Bnei Yisrael were going to be killed on Purim. So the Megillah continues, that she became that the Malka Esther started shaking. What does that mean? What does it mean? Amar Rav Shapir Sanita, that she was so scared about what was going on that she had a physical reaction. She became a nida. Rav Yirmiyah Amar Shehutzachal, that she had to go to the bathroom. That again, her they say that people get so scared that their bowels loosen. She got so scared that's what happened to her. It continues, Atikra Esther Hasach, so Esther called to Hasach to go to give a message to Mordechai. Amar Rav, Hasach Zed Daniel, that's Daniel. Why did they call him Hasach? Shachatchu Migdulaso, excuse me, that they cut him down from his greatness, that in the previous kingdoms he had been an advisor to the king, and now he was like a messenger boy, so to speak, that he had been taken down from how great he was. And Shmuel Amar, going the other way, Shekol Divrei Malchus Nechtachin Al Piv, that everything that happened in the kingdom was kind of cut through his words. He would be the final say in what was going on. So she was using Hasach to deliver messages between herself and Mordechai. So Gemara continues, Ladas Mazeh ve'al Mazeh. What does that mean? Rabbi Yitzchak Shachalo. Esther said to Mordechai, Shema Avru Yisrael Achamishuchum Shetorah Dichsiv Bahen Mizeh uMizeh Hem Ksuvim. Because she was trying to figure out, why is this thing happening to the Bnei Yisrael that the Jews are going to be killed now? What did they do? So she said Mazeh. So it was a play on words for that. It says by the luchos, it says mizeh u'mizeh hem ksuvim, that you could be able to see the luchos both. No matter how you looked at them, you were able to see what the writing was. So she said maybe that the Bnei Yisrael were being over on the Aseres Dibros, and the Jewish people were being over on that, and that's why Haman is able to get this decree going that they're going to be able to get wiped out. The Gemara continues, that it says that it was told to Mordechai what Esther says, but it doesn't say, but it doesn't say that Asach came back and gave the message to Mordechai. It just says it was told to Esther what he said. So what happened? From here we learn that that if you're given a message that has bad news, you're not supposed to deliver it. So they give him bad news to say that the Bnei Yisrael were going to be wiped out. Hasach didn't want to deliver that, so therefore she had to go give a different message about what was happening to them. So the Megillah continues. It says, "Lechanos eskal Yehudim I'll go and gather all the Jews, and I'm going to go to Paro. Achlo kedas. What does it mean achlo kedas? Even though it's not the normal way of doing it. Amar Rab Abba shelo kedas, that it was not the custom every day. Shebechol yom v'yom ad achshor ba'onis. That up until now, every time Esther says that I went to Achashverosh, I was compelled to do it, but I didn't go voluntarily to the king, which meant that up until now, she was forced to live with Achashverosh, she was forced to sleep with him, and that's why she was still mutter to Mordechai, because remember, we learned that she was really the wife of Mordechai. But if she's forced to live with Achashverosh, that wouldn't taint her from being able to continue her marriage to Mordechai. But V'achsh baratzim, when now I'm going willingly, even though it was willingly for a purpose, but she's going willingly to Achashverosh, so that's why she's saying now, and when I'm going to be lost, I'm going to be lost. What does that mean? That just like I was lost to my father's house. Remember, her father died right after she was conceived, and her mother died in childbirth. So, I'm also going to be lost to you, that I'm no longer going to be able to be your wife, because I'm going voluntarily to Achashverosh. It's almost, again, like I think the Mefarshim discussed that there's a concept of an Avera Lishma. This was an Avera Lishma that she was doing. She was going to be doing an Avera, but it was for the purpose of trying to save the Bnei Yisrael. So, they just discussed that. So the Megillah continues, Vayavar Mordechai, that Mordechai passed. What did he pass over? Amar Rav Shehever Yom Rishon Shel Pesach B'Tainis. That he passed over the first day of Pesach, which with the Tainis. Because a lot of people think that the story of Purim took place, that on Yud Gimel, Haman, they came up with this decree they're going to kill the Jewish people, and then it was supposed to happen, and right away the whole story takes place. There was an 11-month gap between when the story of Purim takes place until the Jews fought in Shushan. So what happened was that on the first that decree came out on Yud Gimel of Nisan, and then on the 14th of Nisan. So Mordechai declared a 3-day fast. So it turns out that the first day he passed over the normal Yom Tov of Pesach, and instead of having Pesach, they had a fast day for 3 days instead. Shmuel Amar Da'avar Arkuma Demaya, that he passed over a pool of water when he was going to gather together all the people. Means he traveled to go get everybody. We had this Gemara a few days ago. It says that on the third day in Esther wore Malchus. What does it mean? Big day Malchus Miboile. It should have said she wore clothes of royalty. What does it mean that she wore royalty? Amar Rabbi Lazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Melamed Shalavshta Ruach HaKodesh, that she was wearing Ruach HaKodesh. Ksiv Hacha Al Tibash Uksiv Hazam Ruach Levasha as Amasai, that she was clothed with Amasai, which again was referring to Ruach HaKodesh. Rabbi Lazar, now the Gemara is going. Is leaving the Megillah for a little bit. It's just saying some other sayings from Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Chanina. You shouldn't view when someone gives a bracha and he's just a commoner and he gives you the bracha. You shouldn't take it lightly. That there were two Gedolei Hadar, and the Gemara is going to say who, that they were blessed by two commoners, and Iskaima Behen, and the blessings came true. Ve'eluhein David v'Daniel. David debarchi Arvana d'chsiv v'yom Arvana el Hamelech, that Arvana said to the king, speaking to David HaMelech, that Hashem should save you, and that's what happened. And the Mefarshim say Arvana was actually a king. So he wasn't a commoner, but he was a non-Jewish king. So in that respect, he was considered to be a hedyot, and the bracha came true. And Daniel de Barche Daryavesh Tichsiv Lakach di Ant Palach Le Bedisa Hu Yishes V'Nach, that Hashem is going to save you. And sure enough, that when Daniel was thrown into the den of lions, he was saved. Now Daniel had his own schusim to stand on that he should be saved from the den of lions, but apparently the Gemara is attributing that the bracha that was given by Daryavesh had some impact on Hashem also saving him from the den of lions. Also, if someone curses you and he's a commoner, it should not be taken lightly. Because Avimelech cursed Sarah, it says that it was a covering for your eyes. Why? Because he gave her a klala, because he said, you pulled the wool over my eyes, that you said that you were not married to Avram, that he was your brother, and therefore there were these intestinal hemorrhoids or the digestive issues that came upon the whole house. So therefore he says, so the same thing's going to happen to you. It should be a covering for your eyes, that your children's eyes should become covered. When it's Chaim and Bizarre, it happened with their children, that it says, that when Yitzchak became old, and his eyesight, and he became blind. So therefore the klala that Avimelech gave was fulfilled through Yitzchak. Rabbi Lazar, Rab Chanina. That Hashem is different than people. Why? Midas basar b'dam adam shofes kedera. The first, a person puts a pot of water down, and then afterwards he goes to get the water so he can pour it into it. First Hashem puts the water in place, and then he puts the pot there. That in the heavens there's this water, that Hashem put the water there first, and then there's the clouds which are going to hold the water, which eventually is going to be falling down to the ground. And Rabbi Silver, when I was listening to his shir from a couple years ago, he said that what it means is that a lot of times people get so worried about the process that they forget what the end result is supposed to be. So they're so worried about doing the steps that they need to do, they forget what the goal is. And what we're supposed to learn from Hashem is that always keep your eye on the ball, what the goal is. Once you realize what the goal is, then you can kind of go backwards and figure out, okay, what's the process? How I'm going to get there. And actually, I just said that from Rabbi Silver. So there, if we bring the gula, whoever says something in the name of the person who repeated it, maybe gula la'olam, you bring the redemption to the world. Shenemar atomer esel lamelech b'shem Mordechai. Because remember, Mordechai did not tell Achashverosh about the plot of Big Son V'Seresh. He told Esther, and Esther told Achashverosh, and then they killed them. So because Esther mentioned Mordechai, that's when later on we're going to get to the Gemara tomorrow. We're going to get to the Gemara that talks about how Achashverosh is going to realize that he had to pay back the good that was done to him through Mordechai. Let's do a little bit more. Rabbi Chanina, Tzaddik Avad L'Dora Avad. That when a tzaddik dies, he's only lost to his generation, but he still lives on in Olam Haba, in the true world. Mashal Adam She'avda Margalis. It's similar to a person who lost a pearl. Kol Makom Shehi Margalishma. Wherever the pearl is, it's still a pearl. It's just that Lo Avda El Elvayla. It's only lost to the person who lost it, but the pearl itself still has value. So too, when a tzaddik dies, even though the protection that generation had from the tzaddik, that he was able to protect them, and when he dies, that protection is gone, but the tzaddik is still a tzaddik, and he's in Olam Haba, he's in Gan Eden. So it's just he's in a different place, but it doesn't take away from who he was. We'll do one more piece of Gemara. Haman, when he saw Mordechai that was sitting in the Shar HaMelech, so he says, all of this is not worth anything. I have everything, and it's worth nothing to me. What was it talking about? Amr Elazar, Amr Chanina, the Shah Shira Haman is Mordechai Yoshev B'Shar HaMelech. When Haman saw that Mordechai was sitting in the gate of the king, Amar calls that that this whole thing is worth nothing to me. Rav Chizda, Amr Rav Chizda, Zeba Purpuzboli, turning to Tatzvama Beis, Zeba Pruzboti, that this one came with his wealth, meaning Mordechai came with a lot of wealth, and Haman came from a place of poorness, because Haman, I think it's a Gemara, it discusses later, Haman was actually a slave. He was a slave to Mordechai. He had to sell himself to Mordechai because he didn't have any money. So when he would see Mordechai, he would see the Chal Zeno Shaveli, because whatever Masha Kana Eve, Kana Rabba, whatever a servant acquires, his master acquires. And he realized that Mordechai was still his master, technically. So somehow he got out from it, but he realized that it wasn't worth anything. They called Haman the person who sold himself for a loaf of bread. What does that mean? That he had all of his treasures with him. So I think they said that it means that he had a list written down of all of his wealth, and he would point it. And he would point to the list and say, that this whole thing isn't worth anything to me, because when I see Mordechai, it's all takes away. And again, as we spoke before, that a person can have everything in the world. Haman could have played his cards right. He would have been the second in power to Achashverosh, and he would have had everything in the world. And he couldn't live with it that Mordechai was there, so he ended up losing everything.